Okay, let's get to your question. Let's do cash flow from assets. Think about it and tell us. Yes. No, no, you're giving your own name. Your name. Because I already have their name through my own stuff. I just want to know who rated them. Because if you rate them too much or too little, you're going to pay that out of your own pocket. Otherwise, I don't care who rated them. And grows, right? Where are you? Okay. What do you think, Ethan? Tell me why. So, guys, when your friends are talking, respect that person and listen to them, okay? If you want to have conversations between yourselves, that's okay. You can have them outside. Go ahead. All right. And why? Why is that correct? Why is it the fact that we cannot know? What's the definition of operating cash flow? Okay. It's net income plus depreciation plus interest expense. Okay. So just because your net income is negative last year does not mean your operating cash flow is negative or any sign. Okay. If you had very little depreciation and no interest expense, if your net income was negative enough, operating cash flow is going to be negative. But if you had a lot of depreciation interest expense and your negative net income was relatively small, it could be positive. So you don't know. Same thing goes with cash flow to shareholders. Cash flow to shareholders, dividends plus net new equity. Well, that has nothing to do with income per se. Okay, dividends are decided by the board. They can decide to pay dividends that year. Okay, and they may have issued shares or they pay no dividends. That would make it negative. Or they repurchased and dividends positive, or none of them zero. Again, it doesn't depend on income. I want you to think in these terms. Whenever you make a statement on a certain thing, think about its definition. All right, cash flow to shareholders, dividends plus net new equity, dividends minus net new equity, uh, cash flow from assets. It's it has two definitions. One of them is from sources point of view, operating cash flow minus net capital spending minus change in net working capital. Well, if I cannot determine whether operating cash flow is going to be of any sign, I can't say anything about cash flow from assets either. And same thing about E. Okay. Always think in those terms. Again, remember today we're just doing warm up, so you can be generous to your friends. Okay, Ethan's discussion was a little bit better, so I'm gonna rate that a 5. All right, let's do a problem. Let me see. By the way, in this board, Typically 400 and 500 questions are numerical questions. Not necessarily, but typically. So during Jeopardy, if you pick a 500, you can almost bet that it's a numerical questions. 300s may or may not be. 1 and 200s almost always are either definitions or basic conceptual questions. Because remember, those are going to matter in terms of who wins the tournament. When you give an answer, whether it's a 500 question or a 100 question, it's worth only 100 points. But when we determine who wins that day's tournament, these things matter because if you give a right answer as a group, you get 500. If you give a wrong answer, 500, I call them the geos. If you give wrong answer, you get negative 500, just like in the game Jeopardy. At the end of the day, we add them up. The group that won the tournament is going to have that group points multiplied by 1.25. So if you answered 5 questions and you get them all correct, that's 500 points, right? If you won the tournament, that's going to be 625. But remember, the questions you give as an answer as a group counts 4 times as much. Multiply that by 4, so you will be getting what is 625 times 4? 2,500 out of 2,000. Think of it that way. So there is an incentive to pick hard questions. You don't have to. If all your group says, do you want to pick easiest questions possible and get our 5 correct if you can finish 5 rounds? That's your choice. You're basically saying we're not going to compete for the crown. All we want to do is stay in the lead. You guys are not familiar with that concept because there is no demotion in US leagues. In Europe, there are demotions. You could be Real Madrid, and if things go bad, you may not be playing in La Liga next year. You're demoted to the next one. All right. So let's start with a balance sheet question, and let me end this, and let's pick a group. Okay, Group Ocho, where are you? Okay, you guys are they're gonna give the answer, but I won't. Actually, let me restate. I'm gonna come up with the question. I want you to work all on it, and I'm gonna pick the group later. Okay. But for now, I want all of you to work on it. And you guys can turn and talk to them if you want to. I mean, ideally, we should be eliminating these because nobody's using them, but maybe next year. Then we can actually put the tables together and do something better. If any group is willing to give an answer and discuss it, I'll let them do it. You're Ocho, right? Okay, Ocho wants to make an argument. Okay, tell us. How did you come up with that? Whether or not it's D, this is not Jeopardy, it doesn't matter too much. Okay, now that's what you did mechanically, but what are those things? When you deduct total net fixed assets from total assets, what do you get? I mean, you've done the correct thing. You just need to kind of argue what that is. The difference between the two is called current assets, right? Remember, total assets are equal to current assets plus net fixed assets. So if you find the difference of the total and net fixed, you get current assets. But I'm looking for current liabilities. What's out there contains current liabilities in its definition. Well, it's net working capital, and that's current assets minus current liabilities, which means current liabilities is current assets minus net working capital, right? Which is precisely what you guys have done, but I want you to think in those terms, all right? I mean, let's for the hell of it do the calculations. For this, I don't need Excel. 12,600 minus 9,700, that's my current assets, okay? And actually, let me see. Actually, your answer is not even correct because I need to deduct from this net working capital. It's 1,100. I don't care for this today. It's correct or not? Yes. Your own name. Yeah. Because when I pull these things into Excel, I know who's doing the evaluating. I get their name from my own form. And since these things are timestamped, I can match those. Remember, I have mad Excel skills. Just because you think you won't be able to do it doesn't mean I won't. And it's not that complicated. All of the responses in Google are timestamped. So I know exactly how you've done it. I know when I've done it. I'm just going to put them together. Basically, that's how I want you to think about these things. All right. Let's pick another question. Then let's do something from income statement. So I'm going to rate these guys a 5. Remember, today we're generous.